So we are reacting to Sunny V2, the stupidest criminals of all time. Let's go.
In 2009, Matthew McNally and Joey Miller robbed a home in Iowa using masks drawn onto their faces with permanent black marker. Whilst on the run, the two discovered that permanent black marker doesn't rub off easily, leading to their simple arrest and embarrassingly stupid mugshots. However, these two still look like geniuses in comparison to some of the other idiots we'll be talking about as we discuss the stupidest criminals of all time. Take for example MacArthur Wheeler, who robbed two banks in broad daylight as he thought that pouring lemon juice on his face would make him invisible to cameras. When shown the bank surveillance footage, Wheeler refused to believe that he was visible, stating to officers, "But I wore the juice," believing that as long as he didn't come near a heat source, he should have been completely invisible. Police concluded that Wheeler was not crazy.
He's saying, "But I wore the juice." That's literally confessing to it. Saying, "No, it was me, but I shouldn't have shown up on the camera."
Or on drugs, just incredibly mistaken, with the lemon juice mistake eventually costing Wheeler a 24.5-year prison sentence. However,
What'd he do,
if we're
though?
on the topic of terrible disguises, then we can't go past Dennis Hawkins, whose disguise as an old lady wasn't much better. His sweater accompanied fake boobs, a full beard, and fittingly clown pants, with this insanely recognizable outfit helping police to catch Hawkins only an hour after the robbery. The police chief for the area stated, "He would get my nomination for dumbest criminal, I think. You still have his black facial hair with a blondish wig. Definitely different." Different is
Yeah,
also a
what the
good
fuck?
way to describe Patrick McGuire's disguise, who robbed an Illinois convenience store while covering his face with a clear plastic bag. He was only able to obtain $60 from the robbery. However, due to his extensive criminal history, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison for the stunt, meaning that he had to spend
For
one
$60?
history. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison
For $60? Is what you gotta ask yourself. If you're thinking about doing crime or doing stupid shit for money, is it worth it? It's literally paper. If you work a job that gives you $10 an hour, that's 1 day, and you make that money. You're gonna give up 15 years of your life for it.
for the stunt, meaning that he had to spend 1 year in prison for every $4 stolen from the store. Talk about a bad return. Equally bad was
Yes,
Paul
sir.
Sinclair's, who attempted to rob a bank in Florida by using his fingers curled up into a gun shape. The quote-unquote weapon was so non-threatening that the bank teller gave him only $120, after which he'd flee on foot before being caught by police only 10 minutes later. Then there was James Blankenship, who thought that robbery was legal as long as you did it at a certain time of day. Back in 2013, Blankenship broke into his own mother's home, after which the police were called
His
and
own
taken to
mother?
their Facebook page later that day to explain what had happened. He fled the scene upon seeing his mother. The male was located under the house hiding in a crawl space. When advised of his charges, he made the statement, "I thought you could only be charged with burglary if you break in during the night time." Blankenship was given 180 days in jail and ordered to pay a $100 fine, yet this wasn't the only time when a person was dumb enough to think that a law didn't apply to them. Because when Reuben Pavin was caught stealing from a charity thrift shop in New Hampshire, he'd state that he thought everything was free because of the name of the business, Finders Keepers. The sign did say Finders Keepers, so I took that DVD player, took it home, Pavin told the local TV station. A couple of weeks later, the stuff is still there on the porch, so I'm thinking to myself, Finders Keepers, they probably just put stuff out there for people to take. The business responded via Facebook stating, "This man who was caught on video is saying it is all a misunderstanding. He thought everything at our store was free. Is that really the best defense he could come up with?" After which Pavin reportedly turned in the stolen goods to police, holding that he's not a bad person or a bad dad. And
If I'm
he's
honest.
just unbelievably stupid.
If I'm honest, I kinda believe him. Because I think he is just really stupid, because I can be stupid sometimes. My brain works different, and this is something that I do. If it's all out on the front porch, like if I see something outside someone's front door, front porch, unless it's like a package, if I see something outside a shop or a house, I'll take it, if I'm honest.
Was he as dumb as Derek Mosley, who in 2013 attempted to rob a store named Discount Gun Sales by using a baseball bat? When Mosley allegedly barged into Discount Gun Sales and smashed a display counter with his baseball bat, the store manager simply pulled out his own personal firearm and pointed it straight at the would-be robber, holding Mosley in the store until he was arrested and charged with first-degree robbery. A similar story then came out of Texas in July 2022 when a gun store was robbed at knife point, although this tale instead ended in a body bag as the robber was fatally shot by the store owner as he tried to exit with his loot. But what happens when you accidentally call 911 whilst committing a crime? Pocket dialing the police is probably a fairly common occurrence. However, for Carson Reinhardt and Nathan Teklemariam, it happened at the most unfortunate moment, specifically while they were breaking into a car. The alert dispatcher soon realized that the call was an accidental one, and moreover that the guys on the other end might be up to no good.
What are the
next
chances?
35 minutes, the dispatcher stayed on the line, listening and gathering information, as Teklemariam and Reinhardt did the following. Discovered a car that they thought they could burglarize, discussed how to break into the car, allegedly broke into the car, exclaimed in delight over finding narcotics in the car, became confused as to how and why a police car was following them, and reacted in disbelief when the arresting officer revealed that they'd been on the line to 911 the entire time. Scott Simon found himself in a similar situation, although under much more severe circumstances. Whilst on trial for murder in 2015, Scott was successfully sentenced to life in prison, as 2 years prior he'd pocket dialed the police while admitting to a friend that he was the one who committed the crime. He had no idea he called 911, a sheriff's office spokeswoman told the Miami Herald. He basically told on himself, as did Albert Bailey, although in a much stupider way. Bailey had planned on robbing a bank in Fairfield, Connecticut, although rather than exercising the element of surprise, he'd call the bank prior to the robbery stating, "I want $100,000 in large bills and no die packs. I'll be sending someone into the bank to get the money. Don't call the police, we are monitoring the police scanner." Prior to making this phone call, Bailey had already served 7 years in prison for a previous bank robbery. However, this new plan was equally ineffective, as after arriving at the bank to collect his cash, Bailey was locked inside, arrested, and sentenced to another 9 years in prison. Although, if he wanted to avoid this time behind bars, he could have had a chat with Tito and Amanda Watts, who got arrested to avoid this time.
See the guy on the left? If I was born that ugly, I would be so pissed. Like, I would be so mad if I was that ugly. Like, I'm not Leonardo DiCaprio, you know what I mean? But, like, just nothing went right for this guy at all. His ears, his eyes are a bit crazy. He's got a gap in his teeth. He's got a little scrawny face. It looks like if you injected a rodent with something to turn them into a human, that's what would come out, is that guy with the glasses.
Time behind bars, he could have had a chat with Tito and Amanda Watts, who got arrested in Florida for selling tickets to enter heaven at a price of $100. Tito Watts said in his police statement, "I don't care what the police say. The tickets are solid gold, and it was Jesus who gave them to me behind the KFC and said
this
to sell
man's
them
on
so I
crack.
could get me some money to go to outer space. You should arrest Jesus because he's the one who gave me the golden tickets and said to sell them. I'm willing to wear a wire and set Jesus up." He earned over $10,000 to sell them.
He's willing to set Jesus up, that's so funny. This man is definitely on crack. Oh, the woman, sorry. Was it both of them?
Jesus up. The couple had apparently earned over $10,000 from the stunt, meaning that they were able to find people even dumber than them, one of which might have been Ruben Zarate. While attempting to rob a muffler shop in 2008, Zarate was told that the shop couldn't access the money safe without their manager, who didn't begin his shift until later that afternoon. Instead of bailing on the robbery, Zarate instead gave them his phone number, asking them to give him a ring the next time the manager was in. They did.
Wait, what happened?
Zarate was told that the shop couldn't access the money safe without their manager, who didn't begin his shift until later that afternoon. Instead of bailing on the robbery, Zarate instead gave them his phone number, asking them to give him a ring the next time the manager was in. They did so later that afternoon, although after returning to the store, Zarate received no money and was instead met by police and charged with aggravated robbery. Then there was the man who gave the people he was robbing something even stupider. The unnamed robber walked into a London bank carrying a gun and a bag, which he'd take to the front desk before demanding £700,000 in cash from the bank worker. But after making his demands, the crook handed over his gun to the cashier instead of the bag. Investigating authorities
can
stated
it be
the
that
guess is that he
stupid?
is very inexperienced and panicked when he approached the cashier, handing over his gun instead of a bag by mistake. But it was Trevor Jones who left an even more damning piece of evidence at his crime scene. After breaking into a house in Atlanta, Jones took a moment to check his Facebook on the owner's computer before leaving without logging out. Less than 3 years later, a similar story entered news headlines, reading, "A 26-year-old Minnesota man has been tracked down by police after leaving his Facebook profile logged in at a house he allegedly robbed," although this story has a much funnier ending. The homeowner decided to message the robber via his Facebook, stating, "You left a few things at my house last night, how can I get them back to you?" which was followed by the robber agreeing to come back to the home so he could collect the stuff he forgot. However, the robber didn't get any of his items back and was instead arrested while still wearing a watch that he'd stolen from the night before. While both of these idiots used social media poorly, at least they didn't brag about the robbery in a YouTube video, as is what happened in the bizarre case of Hannah Sabata. In 2012, at the age of 19, Sabata stole $6,000 from a bank in Nebraska, and while almost anybody else would have simply kept quiet, Hannah instead took to her YouTube channel Jelly Beanie to upload a video titled Chick Bank Robber, in which she'd straight up admit to having just committed a robbery. She'd then discuss her entire methodology for the crime while showing the money and the amount that had been stolen, before concluding the video by describing the vehicle she had used and that it had its license plates removed. This information eventually resulted in Hannah Sabata's arrest and sentencing of 10 to 20 years prison, done so in a public courtroom filled to maximum capacity with people who had seen the video. Just 2 years prior to this, 21-year-old Frank Singleton was being released from Palm Beach County Jail, having just served time for a trespassing charge. The only issue was he didn't have a car to leave the jail, so he decided to steal—
This man is... The transitions between each criminal is so smooth.
Capacity with people
Such
who
a
had
good
seen
video.
the video. Just 2 years prior to this, 21-year-old Frank Singleton was being released from Palm Beach County Jail, having just served time for a trespassing charge. The only issue was he didn't have a car to leave the jail, so he decided to steal one from the visitors' parking lot, yet the car he decided to steal was a manual, and he could only drive auto. Singleton sat in the car, being arrested and sentenced to a further 6 years in prison, telling deputies that he tried to take the car because he was a manual and he could only drive auto. Singleton sat in the car looking like an idiot before being arrested and sentenced to a further 6 years in prison, telling deputies that he tried to take the car because he didn't feel like walking to his home about 6 miles away. And while you may be sat here thinking that these criminals can't get any dumber, it's time to introduce 53-year-old Michael Anthony Fuller. While it's common knowledge that the US banknote doesn't go any higher than $100, Fuller had the genius idea to create a counterfeit $1 million note before trying to use it at his local Walmart. He loaded his cart with a vacuum cleaner, a microwave, and various other items totaling $472 before handing the $1 million note to the cashier, expecting $999,528 in change. Needless to say, Walmart wasn't able to facilitate this, and instead store staff called police. Fuller was later charged with attempting to obtain property by false pretense and uttering a forged instrument.
This was a banger of a video. I'm gonna watch more of this guy, I think. I'm gonna subscribe. Subscribe if you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments if you've done any stupid crimes. Or if you've seen any stupid crimes. And like if you enjoyed.